property owner there. And but we have for years we have gone to buy stuff at Copart. Matter of fact, I bought a 2019 crew cab dually Cummins turbo diesel truck, and it was like half price. It got hit in the back bumper. Uh, we bought a lot of cars that have like hail damage, minimal damage. I mean, basically, when someone has an insurance claim, a lot of times they work it out with an insurance company whether to repair the vehicle or whether to just get paid out. And then the insurance company recoups their money by reselling the vehicle through Copart. So
Hey everyone, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It is, what day is it? It's Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023. You know, it's not every day that Jim Bob Duggar shows up in a public setting at a public meeting for his first like public event. Well, he had an audience, a much smaller audience, but it's not every day you see this man show up and admit that I'm junk. I mean, sort of. Okay, he didn't say he was junk, but he legit said that he was going to have a junkyard.
Nothing scares me but poverty. Nothing.
Yep, that's right. Jim Bob Duggar is still taking out the trash, and he is part of the trash, and he is opening up a brand new junkyard. And he showed up at a Town planning meeting or a city council meeting, and it was like a hearing, and they had filed an appeal because, you know, the city planning commission didn't want this junkyard. And so Jim Bob had to flex, and he showed up at the meeting with like literally all his friends, and his best friend Tim Burris, who wrote a letter for Josh to the judge about what a great man Josh Duggar is, was there on the city council to move it along to get it suddenly approved. So the planning commission did not like this idea, and suddenly Tim Burris, Johnny on the spot, who got land from Jim Bob when he wrote a letter for Josh, now helped him get a junkyard. And I was like kind of shocked to see Jim Bob in any capacity, because frankly, we have not seen this guy talk since, I don't even know, before the conviction. If you remember, he was running for Senate during Josh's trial because he's that much of a narcissist, and since then has been completely and utterly quiet. But this takes things to new levels. So Jim Bob Duggar is trash. News at 11. And we've got an update on what's going on with the Duggars documentary. So before we dive into this topic, let's get started by giving the video a thumbs up if you have not yet, please. Let's try to hit 4,000 likes on this video. And then do me a favor and click the subscribe button down below if you have not yet subscribed, if you're interested in more junk like this. And make sure to leave a comment if you have something to say. Click on the bell if you'd like to get notified anytime I go live or new content loads. And share the video with all of your friends who are obsessed with the Duggar downfall. There was a day 2 years ago, it was April 28th, 2021. Josh Duggar was arrested, and the news reverberated all over. We knew ahead of time what was coming. Well, we didn't know exactly, but I had gotten word back in November of 2019 that Josh was going to be facing charges of CSAM. That came to fruition in April 2021. And now Josh Duggar is in prison until 2032, and that's not stopping Jim Bob from his business empire. So Jim Bob Duggar used to make a lot of his money on Counting On, where he made his kids work for free, and they pretended like they were good Christians that were just living the basic life principles, life of perfection and success. Yes. And they made a lot of money. And Jim Bob invested a lot of that money into real estate and into businesses instead of paying his kids. Jim Bob amassed millions of dollars, and his kids live in trailers, and some of them live in RVs. And for Jim Bob having as much wealth as he does, I think the kids would be living more affluent than they do, given that they were all famous from the time they were born. But the wealth did not transfer, and Jim Bob keeps the money for himself. And his latest project is that he is planning to open a junkyard. Something that I thought was super interesting about this, let me just tell you, is that Jim Bob admits that he buys junk cars that have been totaled by insurance, and then those cars get fixed up and they're sold at his properties. Josh Duggar actually spoke at this meeting and admitted that he had purchased numerous cars from this company. And this company that he partners with is called Copart. Now, Copart sells like junked out cars that have been totaled or been in accidents. They're kind of like a auction slash location where you can buy cars at low prices, and then people that want to fix them up and resell them can. These are cars that have titles that are like generally totaled. So an insurance company totals the title, meaning it has had significant damage, more damage than the car is worth. And sometimes that damage can impact not only the safety of the car, the structure of the car, the crash abilities of the car. These are like questionable cars to buy, but they're also a super big safety hazard. So a lot of times you don't want to buy a car from these types of places, but some people have to because it's the only option they have for a brand new car. And that's the market that Jim Bob is tapping into. And so he sells people that are in the market for cars, junked out cars that have been totaled, that he aesthetically fixes up. And then who knows what happens after that. So that's what Josh Duggar was actually doing before he got arrested. And Jim Bob has taken this over. And well, he has already done it anyway. But anyways, the city of Tantytown's planning commission apparently did not want this project in Tantytown because, well, who wants a big fat junkyard right as you drive into the town? Well, that no from the planning commission wasn't met well by Jim Bob. So he showed up at the city planning commission to share how he felt. And as always, Jim Bob was as articulate as ever. I mean, why wouldn't Jim Bob convince you to do this? Well, thankfully, Jim Bob wasn't the only one that talked. He also brought attorneys and like a real estate guy and people from the company. And so this is basically Jim Bob's first public appearance. Check it out.
But anyway, my plan, and what I've done is I've already bought 8 acres beside the entrance. You can see on the map up there. 8 acres beside where the Copart driveway will be. And then I have under contract to close next month, another 7 acres. And so my plan is to build 7 60 by 100 foot buildings, so 6,000 square feet. They would be 1,500 square foot units that would be similar to what you see as you come into Elm Springs. There's some little flex buildings there on the side, kind of black and white. And something similar to that, maybe a little taller garage door, but it'd be something very similar to that. They would be clean and nice. And theoretically, the depends on how many units somebody wants, if they want 1 unit or if they want 2 units, but up to 28 units of commercial business space for Tinytown, which they could have potentially 1 employee, which that'd be like 28 new employees in Tinytown, or it could be 2 employees, that'd be 56, but it'll bring a lot of new businesses, startup businesses to Tinytown. And then that will create sales tax revenue, which it looks like you were short on your sales tax, this month. And every new business that we bring into Tinytown will generate sales tax revenue. And that's what funds our fire department, our police department, and all the public services. So anyway, appreciate your consideration. And anyway, I think Copart would be a great asset to Tinytown. And another thing is too, we're talking about, their office here, you can look on the map up there, that's like 800 feet from the road. Their main storage area will be the back area there, which is like over 1,000 feet from 412. And the elevation, I know they're talking about wrecks and all this stuff, where their driveway is, I agree, like Harmon Road is very dangerous to pull out of because you're going over that hill and the people are flying. Where this driveway is, you've already kind of got a straight stretch there for a while. And so it's not something where you've got a hill right there in front of you. You've got you can see a long ways from where that driveway is in both directions. So I don't think pulling in and out is going to be it's not going to be like pulling out of Harmon Road. And then hopefully in the near future too, they'll add signalization there at when they build a new interstate, or maybe even Harmon Road to stop the traffic and put brakes in the traffic. And but anyway, and then they're gonna sit so far off the road, and then also there's all the trees and stuff that they're going to put around there. It's going to be pretty well disguised in the back, and they're going to have like an 800-foot driveway with that fenced-in area for people to pull in and to load their cars or take the cars out.
So at the very beginning of this video, you saw that he said that you can buy cars there that are salvaged titles and that they get refixed. You can buy them at auction. Jed and says that he buys them. Jim says he buys them. And then as he's trying to explain it to people, because they're apparently very convinced that this is going to be an eyesore, because it's like one of the first things that you'll see when you're driving into Taneytown. And then a lot of people were complaining about the traffic, because there's apparently lots of traffic and accidents in this part of the town. And then on top of that, the road not being wide enough, cars getting dropped in and out all the time, lots of noise. But it worked, you guys, because they voted for this thing, right? So he willingly admits that he is selling salvaged titles of cars. And who does this benefit? This takes buy used, save the difference to a whole U level. So Jim Bob has really fallen from grace. He was on Counting On and he was making a ton of money. And now he's back to selling cars that are salvaged cars. So let me explain to you what a salvaged car is, so you understand like kind of how these cars can be a little bit dangerous. One, because one is a safety issue. Two, it comes down to a insurance, if it can be insurable or not. Just did a little Google search, and this is what Capital One Auto Navigator says about salvage cars, okay? A vehicle receives a salvage title if it sustains a significant amount of damage and is declared a total loss. When the cost of fixing a car comes too close to or exceeds the car's value, an insurance company may determine a vehicle is totaled. And the state will then issue a salvage title for the car, and the vehicle can earn a salvage title, also known as a branded title, due to severe collision, flooding, parts theft, vandalism, fire damage, and sometimes hail. A vehicle with a salvage title cannot be registered or driven on public roads until it has been repaired and passed a state inspection, at which point it receives a rebuilt title. If an ad notes that the vehicle has a junk title, that means the totaled car is beyond repair and should only be used for parts. So they promise that these cars are not just for parts. They are selling just the cars. They're not going to sell the parts of the cars. That was their promise. And they're supposed to have like a ton of cars there. Hundreds. Now, as far as like why someone wouldn't want to buy one of these cars is because safety. So it says safety is the main concern, even though the exterior of the vehicle might look okay, what's beneath it might not be. If a car has a salvage title because of a collision, the crash structure likely will have been compromised and may not be able to protect you in an accident. That's because modern cars have structural metal that's supposed to bend and absorb the force of an impact. The metal cannot be bent back into position to be reused. Once it's done its job, it doesn't have the same resilience. Additionally, while a salvage title car might be cheap to purchase, it might be a huge headache and financial burden to own. The shops that rebuild these vehicles tend to use the least expensive components. Flood cars in particular can have all sorts of unforeseen problems. Mold and corrosion can grow underneath the carpets and in nooks and in crannies, and electrical nightmares are almost inevitable. A salvage title that has received a rebuilt title also will be more difficult and more expensive to insure. And to get these cars back on the road, Jim Bob and his buds have to basically repair the cars just enough so they can pass the state inspection. And so they explain that people that are in this business are generally not a lot of them are not very honest. So it says that It's a big business, the salvage car business, but it's also not the most honest. People buy wrecked vehicles and repair them enough to pass a state inspection, and that allows the refurbishers to apply for rebuilt titles. But beware of sellers who essentially put lipstick on a pig to dupe unwitting shoppers into buying problematic vehicles. Some insurance companies offer coverage, albeit limited, for rebuilt vehicles, and you can legally drive these cars, you can legally redrive these cars on the road. Basically, he sells cars that are totaled, puts enough effort into them to make them drivable, and even with a rebuilt title, it doesn't mean that the car is safe. And so, like they were explaining, once the frame of the car has been bent, it cannot be restored. And a lot of times you see like James Duggar, they buy cars a lot and vehicles a lot that have their front ends completely totaled. And so theoretically, some of these cars could be very risky and very dangerous if they got into a front end collision, especially if they've been rebuilt. So definitely not the most ideal cars for someone to buy. And the car market is really difficult right now. Like, we just bought a car in December and there was literally no brand new cars on the lot. So we had to special order our car, and we love our car. We definitely did not buy a lemon like Jim Bob would sell, but used cars are really expensive right now. So there's a lot of incentive for these used cars dealers to paint a turd or put lipstick on a pig and sell them to people. And it's just, this is the business that his dad was involved in that ended up his dad getting into trouble. His dad went to prison for a while because he was selling cars on consignment. This was the industry that Jim Bob was involved in very heavily before the show. And then once he was on the show, he really moved over to the real estate side of things. And while he's done a lot of the real estate stuff, he's still maintaining this junkyard and these junk cars and scamming people. So to me, this just proves that Jim Bob is still scamming people. Now, listen, if you're someone that buys junk cars and likes the salvage cars, that's fine. If that's something that you say, well, that's all I can afford, I'm sure there's a way that you can find a car that doesn't have a salvage title that would be safer than a junk car. But understandably so, these cars can put people into dangerous positions, and Jim Bob is really taking advantage of that market. And that's what I don't like about it. So he's still in some ways taking advantage of people. And to me, that's like not the most honest way to be in business. And this specific industry is raft with dishonesty, as Capital One said. I mean, Cody Brown sells these kinds of cars too. Bet you didn't know that. So Jim Bob and Cody have something in common. So it's actually shocking to see that they passed it, because there were so many people from town that didn't like it and showed up and were not supportive, and still he got what he wanted because he brought his flex, and Tim on the city council passed it for him. So if you ever wonder why Jim Bob is able to get things done, because he gets friends in high places. He finds friends and then he gives them gifts and then he gets what he needs. Just saying. Jim Bob Duggar is still selling junk cars, and he's probably selling the junk cars that Josh had left over on his car lot. He's literally cleaning up Josh's mess. Who wants to bet Josh will take over this company when he gets out of prison? Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.